for documents is and why we're doing this. So as a way of background, a number of the assessment groups do have goals documents. 3 years ago, SBAG, for the first time, put out a goals document. Unlike some AGs, our goals document does not say we need to do this first, this second, this third, this is our highest priority, this is our second highest, this is our 10th highest, this is our 20th highest, in part because we are such a very diverse community. And as a group, we did not want to say that comets are more important than KBOs, are more important than near-Earth asteroids versus Trojans versus Centaurs. We want our goal, sorry, pardon the use of the word, but our intent was to say, what is it that we're really trying to learn? And when you actually start trying to do it, in a lot of places, there are some things that are common across whatever we're going to do, like, finding out what's out there in our, if you're doing major planets, there's probably only 2 gas giants in the solar system, but there's lots of unknown asteroids, comets, trans-Neptunian objects, centaurs, all sorts of stuff. So for example, one of our big things is just what's out there. So we put together a set of goals. We are also different from other communities in that we have a charge that is not just scientific, but also involves planetary defense and human exploration. So the way we phrased it was that our 3 basic goals have to do with doing great science involving these small objects, doing planetary defense and enabling planetary defense, and enabling and working with human exploration. And some of those overlap with other communities. Planetary defense, as far as I know, we're the only AG that worries about planetary defense. But we tried to put together a set of goals. We approved them. 3 years is a good time scale to revise them, so we have started looking at them. And so what we will find is that some of the original goals will not change very much. Some of them we have kind of reorganized. We also found a couple of things where they were not in our original set of goals. We thought they should be a goal of this community, which we will talk about. Something that has always gone along, or that actually I think it predates the goals document, is trying to have a document discussing the technology that is needed to accomplish small bodies objectives. And so we are going to hear from people who are in charge of each of these. Several of these, a draft version was sent out of the ones that had been in the previous document. A draft revision was sent out at the end of last week. We will send out a version hopefully next week that will incorporate a few of the comments from here, but then we would like to get community comment for a period of weeks, the same sort of thing that we do with findings. If we are close to having converged, we will declare them, if the community seems happy with them, we will approve them then. If not, we may do one more revision. So this morning, what we're going to do is talk through what we have, and we want this mostly to be discussion. Is this the sorts, are there things that we are missing is one of the big things. Do these represent the sorts of things that the community wants to do? That's the other thing. So the people in charge of each of the sections will discuss it. We are going to keep a kind of a fluid time scale. We actually have, we are behind where we would have been, but I suspect that some of these, there won't be much discussion, not that they aren't important, but we've hashed through them before. I suspect some of these, there may be quite a bit of discussion. We just want to get the input that we need. So let me start with one that is a new goal that we realized should be here, and that, I'll let Carolyn Ernst talk a little bit about, we think that diversity is an important goal.
So do I already have it? Oh my gosh, I'm sorry. Okay. Let's just get back there. Yeah.
All right, thanks. So Tim gave a nice diversity of a different sort in his introduction, and that we have a diverse number of topics that we're all interested in. But of course, we want to make sure that not only do we have a diversity of viewpoints from different topics, but we have a diversity of viewpoints from different demographics and different backgrounds, and to get the most out of what we can from our community. I don't expect you guys to read this. A lot of this is just in here for reference. I did look a little bit into what diversity might mean to NASA. NASA has at least a 2016 Diversity and Inclusion Strategic Implementation Plan, or at least highlighted in colors. They're very broad definitions of what diversity and inclusion mean. Specifically, diversity is the similarities and differences in the individual and organizational characteristics that shape our workplace. And inclusion is the means by which we optimize the benefits of the NASA workforce inherent in our diversity to create more inclusive work environments. And the second down there is just a quote from the introduction of this document, laying a very big motherhood statement about why diversity is important. This is a new goal, or at least a proposed new goal, and so there is not a tremendous amount of text to go off of. I know some of the other people proposing will have, large amounts of words to pull from, and this has already gone through the ringer once. It has strong support to be considered as a goal, and the steering committee started to think that given that workforce diversity is not a SBAG specific topic, that this may be a place where we want to involve multiple assessment groups. And so we're proposing, considering, is there a unified goal that might come out of all these groups? They might be tailored slightly to each group. I could see particular language maybe specific to each group, but the overarching goal could be a coordinated effort. And I think if we do have an overarching goal from multiple AGs, that would have more weight than individual different but similar goals coming from different AGs. And also hoping that this would help us to leverage previous efforts and hone in on what a goal like this should look like. So I reached out to colleagues on the body-specific AGs first. I do intend to talk to CAPTEM and MAPSIT because they're also assessment groups. And the idea was favorably received by all of the groups. Each of my contacts brought the idea back to their respective steering committees, and they were all in favor of pursuing this, which is really great. And so at least the 5 AGs listed below have named a point person to coordinate so that we don't have, hundreds of people on a telecon doesn't work, but 5 might work, although it's still hard to get 5 people on the line at the same time. And so the idea would be we would try to coordinate across the AGs here, but then each of these representatives would go back to their own AGs and solicit input from those communities. So we are unfortunately not to the point where we have had a telecon with this group of 5 people yet, partly because it took a while for all of the AGs to name people and have their little meetings, and partly because the government shut down and at least one of our representatives was shut down, and now one of them is furloughed. So we hope to get at least a tag up to try to coordinate this in the near future once LPI gets up and running, because Justin is furloughed right now. So what's next? I do want all of the AG representatives to go and work with each other to get an idea of what a common goal might be. And like I said before, ideally there would be some big part of this that would be common across the AGs. And again, if there are individual components of this that maybe would be applicable to SBAG but not to some other AG for some reason, I think the AG should be free to add that into their goal or pursue it separately. It doesn't have to be completely coordinated. But most importantly, I wanted to get ideas from the community. So I'm hoping to use most of this time for discussion. A diversity goal could be as simple as a statement saying, we want a diverse, a diverse workforce and diverse community. And it could be, you know, a 800-page tome about how to achieve that. I don't think it's going to be the latter, but I think it needs to be more than just a sentence. And so what exactly, as a community, do we want to say is our goal? And I'm also hoping that we might think about some actions that might be taken to achieve those goals. Now, that doesn't mean we have to solve problems, right? But it might mean we might ask NASA to make a survey or put a statement in somewhere, or, you know, investigate how people in the community think it's going, or what we might do. So I really want to open up the floor and see if people have comments about a diversity goal in general, or more specifically, what might we include in such a goal, and I was planning to take lots of notes.
So, there was a PI diversity workshop organized by NASA in November, and it was a catastrophe in many possible ways. So something I would like to suggest is that, for example, when another intending to have another workshop on the site, is that maybe they could go to your group of art representatives and ask for advice of who should be taking there, how the workshop should be organized. So maybe reaching out to that. I think I can do.
Okay, so the comment for those online was that there was a PI diversity workshop held in November. That was the one at headquarters. Is that true? Which at least the commenter said was a disaster. And she was suggesting that maybe we reach out to people, including Ellen. Was it Ellen Stofan? Is that what you're talking about? All right, she'll give me the name, but reach out to the people that tried to put that together, and maybe come to us for advice about how that might be structured in the future, or what kinds of things might be addressed. Is that the gist?
One of the powerful things I think that we've seen, in at least from observing proposals, and if you look at from the Hubble proposal statistics, is that getting rid of PI names, the ability to identify gender, or even early career versus not, seems to have an impact on proposal acceptance. And I know other observatories are looking at that and trying to find ways to mitigate that. And that seems a way I could push to argue about NASA potentially full of funding grants and other ways, but how are they mitigating these unconscious biases? And that actually seems like a place where there could be an action item.
So is that already, oh, sorry, the comment was, I think in observing proposals, there's been some effort to, is there effort or?
Yeah, so you want to just come down?
Yeah, sure. All right, the speaker's going to come down.
What I was saying is that in the recent Hubble proposals, which includes funding, I think it was pretty blind that you didn't know who the PIs or team were for the proposal. And then in other cases, Space Telescope has also done where you have the proposal team, but it's all alphabetized. So you don't know who the PI is, so that their statistics, and a lot of this is on the archive, for unconscious bias shows that there is a bias towards not selecting younger PIs or early career PIs, women, other minority and underrepresented groups. And so that's one of the ways, by alphabetizing the lists of OIs and PIs and other things, have been trying to mitigate that. And the question is whether there are ways that NASA can be doing that for all their grant proposals, for other kind of proposal calls, and that seems an actionable item AGS could take to advocate of ways that that could be done. And it's other observatories, not just Space Telescope, have been looking at how do we take into account those, or try to remove those unconscious biases in those other ways I've sort of talked about.
So how does that work if you completely made it blind? Because you might have to change how the proposals are made.
So you don't necessarily have to do it completely blind, okay, right? So there are other observatories that do it by alphabetizing. So you don't know that senior person X is the PI of the proposal, or if it is junior woman so-and-so. And so therefore, the unconscious, or again, having the proposal team be the last page of the proposal. So you've read all the science before you've got into the team. And so those are really simple ways that you can do from the observatory, the ground-based observatories are working on now, that don't necessarily remove the entire team. So the last most recent Hubble call, I think, completely removed, or at least for DDs, I think completely removed the proposal team. But other versions of that have had it at the end, have alphabetized it so you can't pick out who's PI. So you're like, you can see the expertise on the team, but you're not making judgments based on age, career stage, et cetera.
Andy? Yeah, and if the people could come up here, it would probably make life easier for me to actually relay accurately what you're saying. Or to make me not have to try to relay accurately what you're saying. Andy Ripken.
Yeah, I strongly support this. I think that we should be aware that a lot of work has been done and that doing another study is probably not necessary, that there's lots of studies have been done, there's lots of data out there. Not just the sorts of things that Meg was talking about, but in other fields and related fields. So I think that there are actions that can be done instead of just saying, all right, we're going to look at this, and then 3 years from now, we'll have to look at it again. And also, I think it's important to keep in mind the different kinds of diversity and inclusion, that it's not just gender diversity or the binary gender diversity. There's, you know, the in-between. There's ethnic diversity. There's disabled, improving access for disabled people. So not just the obvious ones. And also that even bringing people, right, the difference between inclusion and diversity, in my understanding, is not just saying, okay, well, now we have, you know, a student of this ethnicity, and so we're good, but supporting and mentoring those people so that they can not just be a box you take, but get to participate fully. So.
So what I was going to suggest, there are groups such as the DPS, Professional Climate and Culture Subcommittee, who have been working on action items for the community that you may want to ping. Julie Rathbone leads the PCCS, and I'm part of that. We have several, there's a web page where we have reading material, action items that we're suggesting for the community. I'm doing research for statistics on the community, looking at access to planetary science for specifically Latinx and African Americans. So those are resources that you could use when developing this.
Okay, great. Can I find that easily off of the DPS website? Okay, thanks. And I have actually talked to Julie Rathburn. She was not the point of contact for OPEG, but she is at least wants to be involved at a farther back level in commenting and giving advice. Thanks. There was over here.
We have an online comment. Someone's just saying that they got rid of using first name.
Okay, there's in what program did it say?
This is for the LCO.
LCO used initials instead of names to try to get around unconscious bias. That was a comment from online. Okay. Do people think this should be a goal for SBAG? Yes, people are nodding. Good. Okay. At any point, please feel free to contact me or any other member of the steering committee to relay questions, comments, concerns about this. We will obviously be working with these other AGs, but we want to keep the community involved. And so as things start to materialize a little bit better, we will be sending to the listserv. So once the people who are on the listserv are not furloughed anymore, we can add anybody who's not on the listserv already to that listserv. There's another comment. Yeah.
Yeah, I think Peter said a couple years ago that he was experimenting with doing like unconscious bias training before a panel review began. And I never heard if that was successful or not, or if other programs adopted any of those sorts of practices that might help address some of the issues, but also still allow assessments of the strengths of the team to be successful with the project. And I'm just curious if other folks have heard about whether that's...
Okay, let me reiterate that comment. First was that they had heard that Kurt Niebuhr was entertaining having some sort of unconscious bias training before a review panel. And the question was, had anybody else heard if that had happened or had an effect, or any comments on that? At a minimum, I think we should reach out to these program officers that are running panels to see if that is something that they either are thinking about or have done, for sure.
But I don't know if it makes a difference.
Okay. The comment was that at the PI workshop in November, they mentioned that they had been trying that on some programs, but seeing statistics or whether or not that would work would be a good thing. Several hands are going up. Yeah, you.
Yeah, that's what I'm, so I was interested in what that, and I think it's a worthy effort. But I say what you were getting at, because I've been on the reviewing side of a lot of experts, some of them that are not as big here, but have the same issues, like college scholarships and stuff like this. And they do a thorough job of redacting it. It's like hundreds of proposals, doing all this, but it's impossible for me not to know and see through this, right? I mean, and it's my nature to look at details and make inferences, and so I can still try my best not to make assumptions and what have you, but I don't know how successful we would be by sort of like moving, and we're all detail-oriented people, we're looking to find connections and trends and stuff like this. So I think that the unconscious or subconscious bias training before, like, gatherings where we're actually evaluating things could really be beneficial. Because really what we need to do is we need to check all of us. Everybody needs to check themselves. Okay, why am I making this decision? Could I be making a different decision given these data? But, to try to hide it, it just doesn't, I don't think it's going to be, in the long run, successful.
Yep. Okay. So the gist of the comment was even the most heavily redacted proposals, it's usually not that hard to see who the actual leads of the proposal, the people involved were. And so stressing the importance of unconscious bias training or just awareness before panels, just to try to mitigate some of that. I do think awareness in general, beyond just unconscious bias, but just awareness is really important to diversity.
I just had a comment. I think some of the things where we worked with other AGs and come at it from a common perspective carries a lot more weight with NASA itself, right? So while I think this is great, we need to make sure that, as you said, that all or multiple AGs approach this, because it carries a lot more weight right now. It's just the way it works.
Yeah.
So I would take this, I think this is more important than a goal. I think I don't want this to get confused with the rest of the goal part. This is that separate, in my mind, it's a separate thing that all the AGs have to come together. And I think that will carry much more weight. So that's a strategy. I think you're already thinking that way, but just to reemphasize that.
Okay, and so to repeat the comment, Paul Abel was emphasizing that something coming from multiple AGs does have more weight than coming from a single AG, and that perhaps this needs to almost transcend the goals and be a bigger thing to have more of an impact. I think it could also be both. We could have a goal about it, but there's a bigger thing coming out of the bigger machine. I would have to think that most of the kinds of things we're brainstorming and thinking about here would be received well and have similar types of things coming out of those AGs. So I think that it should not be too hard to get unification on something like this. It's not, should we go to Venus or Pluto? That's never going to get resolved among the AGs, but I think the support for diversity and some ways to possibly go about that would make it. Oh, there's one more comment.
A little bit on that. I think that NASA is very progressive. I don't think they need to convince, compared to most of these types of government and what have you, that community, which is a relatively small number of people, or we have great statements and what have you. And in fact, people that are reviewing the proposals are largely not NASA, right? So that's not going to hurt having the diversity of lots of different those aren't the people who are, you know, reviewing the proposal. And fundamentally, that's what we're getting at. Access for younger people and people that may not be as,
But it trickles down, is what I'm saying. So if it's NASA.
I've never had a proposal evaluated by NASA employees.
But the criteria that you're evaluating,
Yeah.
set by the.
That's what I'm saying.
I understand that, but look at the people that are on the panel, right? They're not actually diverse now, they're young. That's because NASA understands.
Yes, but I would point out that the proposals are actually selected by program managers who are NASA.
So the gist of the comment was NASA seems to have a lot of statements about diversity and inclusion and seems to be relatively progressive about some of these things, but it's not NASA itself who are evaluating our proposals, for example. Well, that's another question. Maybe this statement could go to NASA, but it's also, you know, this is an ag for the community. It can be posted by SBAG or all of the ags and saying, hey, community, this is important. You need to be aware of this as you are part of our community.
But the problem with implicit bias is it's implicit. You don't think about it. So you can call diversity all you want, but I think that's the problem, right? It's these things subconsciously. I sat on a panel where that was one of the first things in the introduction was, let's talk about unconscious bias. Here's why here's some things to think about as you review. And I think the tone for the panel was very different. And I don't think that's done on every panel. And so even if that was done, that's a step forward. So I think it's great to have a diversity statement, but I think these things are biases we have that are unconscious, that are harder to get to the root of.
Yeah, so the gist is, the implicit or unconscious bias is just that. And if panels that have been served on where a statement has been said ahead of time actually changes how the panel functions. And so that's a possible action that we can try to get NASA to do. Something like this statement or this 10-minute presentation or whatever should be given at that introductory plenary before a panel or something like that. That's an example of an action we might consider.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
All right. Thank you, Carolyn. And also, I would remind you that, to me, it seems like more diversity is our goal. We are not as diverse as we would like to be. So to me, that is a goal, and goals should lead to actions. But, all right, so thank you very much. And then the next one is the other new goal, which is resource utilization. And Dan Brett is going to be leading that one.